Poor Nanny comforted a terrified little girl at the park. The piercing scream cut through the afternoon air like a blade, freezing every parent at Riverside Park in their tracks. 7-year-old Emma sat huddled beneath the old oak tree, her tiny body shaking as tears streamed down her dirt-stained cheeks, while other adults hesitated, unsure whether to approach the distraught child. One person didn't think twice. Maria Santos, still wearing her worn apron from her morning cleaning job, rushed toward the little girl without a moment's hesitation. If this story touches your heart, please hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear this message today. Don't forget to comment below and subscribe to Millionaire in Love for more inspiring stories that remind us of the power of human kindness. Maria had been walking home from her third job of the day, her shoulders aching from hours of scrubbing floors at the downtown office building. At 42, she carried the weight of supporting her elderly mother and younger brother on her slight frame. Her shoes had holes that let in the cold, and her jacket was patched in 3 places, but her heart remained as warm as the summer sun overhead. "Sweetheart, what's wrong?" Maria asked gently, crouching down to Emma's level. The little girl looked up with wide, frightened blue eyes, her blonde curls tangled and her pink dress torn at the knee. "I can't find my daddy," Emma whispered, her voice barely audible between sobs. "We were playing hide and seek, and now he's gone. I've been looking everywhere." Maria's heart clenched. She recognized that particular brand of terror, the same fear she'd felt as a child, when she'd briefly lost her mother at a crowded market. Without thinking of her own exhaustion, or the fact that she was already late for her evening shift at the diner, Maria sat down beside Emma on the grass. "It's okay, little one. We'll find him together," Maria said, her voice steady despite her own growing concern. She noticed Emma's expensive clothes and shoes, the tiny diamond studs in her ears, but it didn't matter. A scared child was a scared child, rich or poor. For the next hour, Maria stayed with Emma, walking through the park and asking other visitors if they'd seen a man looking for his daughter. They checked the playground, the pond, the parking lot, and every bench. Emma clung to Maria's calloused hand like a lifeline, and Maria found herself falling in love with this brave little girl who tried so hard to be strong despite her fear. "Are you hungry, sweetheart?" Maria asked as Emma's stomach rumbled. Without waiting for an answer, Maria pulled out the small sand, which she'd saved for her own dinner, a simple peanut butter and jelly on day-old bread. "Here, you need to eat something." Emma looked at the humble sandwich and then at Maria's kind face. "But what about you? Won't you be hungry? Don't worry about me." Maria smiled, though her own stomach ached with emptiness. "I had a big lunch." It was a lie, but seeing Emma take small, grateful bites made it worthwhile. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Maria's worry deepened. She'd already missed her shift at the diner, money she desperately needed, but she couldn't abandon Emma. They sat on a bench near the park's main entrance, Emma curled up against Maria's side like a sleepy kitten. "Maria," Emma said softly, "why are you being so nice to me? You don't even know me." The question caught Maria off guard. She thought of her own childhood, of the times when strangers had shown her kindness when her family had nothing. Because everyone deserves kindness, especially when they're scared, and because... Maria paused, tucking a strand of Emma's hair behind her ear. "Because I think you're pretty special." Just then, the sound of running footsteps echoed across the park. A tall man in an expensive suit came sprinting toward them, his face etched with panic and relief. "Emma, oh God, Emma, Daddy." Emma leaped from the bench and ran into her father's arms. The man who Maria would later learn was David Harrison, CEO of Harrison Industries, and one of the city's wealthiest men, held his daughter as if she might disappear again. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart," David said, his voice breaking. "I got an emergency call and stepped away for just a minute. When I came back, you were gone. I've been searching for hours." Emma pulled back and pointed to Maria, who had risen from the bench but remained at a respectful distance. "Daddy, this is Maria. She stayed with me the whole time and shared her sandwich with me and told me stories and said we'd find you together." David turned to look at Maria properly for the first time, taking in her worn clothes, tired eyes, and gentle smile. In that moment, he saw past the surface to the extraordinary heart underneath. "I don't know how to thank you," David said, his voice thick with emotion as he approached Maria. "You stayed with her this whole time, of course," Maria replied simply. She was scared. No child should be alone when they're scared. David studied this remarkable woman who had given up her own evening to comfort a stranger's child. "Please, let me do something for you. Anything. You've given me back the most precious thing in my world." Maria shook her head. "I don't need anything. I'm just glad Emma is safe." But David was persistent. Over Emma's excited chatter about her adventure with Maria, he learned about Maria's 3 jobs, her struggles to support her family, and the dreams she'd put aside to make ends meet. He discovered that Maria had once wanted to be a teacher, but couldn't afford to finish college. He learned that she sent half her earnings to her mother's medical treatments, and that she'd been saving for 2 years just to fix her car. "Maria," David said carefully, "I'd like to offer you a job. I appreciate it, but I already have 3 jobs." Maria replied with a tired smile. As Emma's nanny, David continued, "She needs someone who cares about her, not just someone who sees a paycheck. Today you proved you're exactly the kind of person I want in her life." Emma's face lit up like Christmas morning. "Really, Daddy? Maria could be my nanny." Maria looked between father and daughter, overwhelmed. I don't know anything about being a nanny for." She gestured vaguely at their obvious wealth. "You know the most important thing," David said gently. "You know how to love a child unconditionally. That's worth more than any qualification." The challenges came immediately. Maria felt out of place in David's mansion, intimidated by the other staff who whispered about the charity case Mr. Harrison had brought in. Emma's grandmother, a stern woman who disapproved of her son hiring someone from the streets, made Maria's early days difficult with criticism and condescension. Maria struggled with imposter syndrome, wondering if she belonged in this world of private schools and charity galas. She made mistakes serving Emma lunch on the wrong china, not knowing which fork to use at formal dinners, feeling lost when other wealthy parents spoke about things she'd never experienced. But Emma blossomed under Maria's care in ways that money had never been able to provide. For the first time, she had someone who listened to her fears, who read bedtime stories with different voices for each character, who taught her to find shapes in the clouds and bake cookies that didn't come from an expensive bakery. The breakthrough came 6 months later when Emma fell seriously ill with pneumonia. While the best doctor's money could buy treated her medically, it was Maria who never left her bedside, who sang lullabies through the long nights, who held Emma's hand during the scariest moments. David watched in amazement as Maria's love became the medicine that helped heal his daughter's spirit. When Emma finally recovered, the first thing she said was, "Maria, you stayed with me just like at the park." That moment changed everything. David's mother, who had been Maria's harshest critic, finally saw what her son had recognized from the beginning. The other staff began treating Maria with respect, not because of her title, but because of the light she'd brought into their employer's life. A year after that day in the park, David made an announcement that shocked his social circle. He wasn't just keeping Maria as Emma's nanny, he was putting her through college, funding her education degree, and creating a scholarship foundation in her name for other women who'd had to put their dreams on hold. "But why?" Maria asked, overwhelmed by his generosity. "Because you taught me that wealth isn't measured in bank accounts." David replied, "It's measured in the richness of the heart. You're the wealthiest person I know." Emma, now 8 and thriving, wrapped her arms around both of them. "Can we have a tea party to celebrate?" she asked. "I want to use Maria's good china, the kind that makes everything taste better because it's made with love." As they sat around the small table in what had once been the servants' quarters, but was now Maria's cozy apartment within the mansion, David reflected on how one act of kindness had transformed all their lives. Maria had found not just financial security, but a family. Emma had gained not just a caregiver, but a second mother who loved her unconditionally. And he had learned that the most valuable things in life couldn't be bought, they could only be given freely, from one heart to another. The park where their story began became Emma's favorite place to visit. She would often ask Maria to sit with her under the old oak tree where they'd first met, and Maria would tell her the story of the day a scared little girl taught a tired woman that sometimes the greatest treasures come disguised as ordinary moments of kindness. Maria never returned to those 3 exhausting jobs. Instead, she became the head of the Harrison Foundation's education initiative, helping other women like herself find paths to their dreams. But she never forgot the lesson that day in the park had taught her, that sometimes the most important thing you can offer someone isn't money or possessions, but simply your presence and your heart. Years later, when Emma graduated as valedictorian from high school, she would dedicate her speech to Maria Santos, who taught me that the richest life is one spent lifting others up. And in the audience, 2 hearts that had found each other through a moment of shared humanity would beat with pride, knowing that love truly is the greatest wealth of all. The story reminds us that kindness costs nothing, but is worth everything. Sometimes, the most profound changes in our lives begin with the simplest acts of compassion. In a world that often measures worth by material possessions, Maria's story shows us that true wealth lies in our ability to care for one another, especially in moments when that care is needed most. Thank you for joining us for this heartwarming story. If it moved you, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs inspiration, and tell us in the comments below about a time when a stranger's kindness changed your day. Don't forget to subscribe to Millionaire in Love for more stories that celebrate the beautiful connections that make us human. Until next time, remember that your next act of kindness might just be the beginning of someone else's miracle.